Dr. Don Baham, a community access television producer and the host of an ongoing weekly cable television series, Conversations with Dr. Don. I'm also a retired clinical psychologist and a certified Creole, born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. The program you're about to watch, one of a series of 16 or so individual broadcasts, came about because I wanted to record and share with you highlights of the 2007 Creole Heritage Celebration in the beautiful and historic city of Natchitoches in northwest Louisiana. I wanted to do this because I'd heard good things about this organization of Creoles from a number of sources. An organization that tracks the Creole diaspora? When I grew up in New Orleans in the 30s and 40s, I knew of no formal organization of Creoles like the Creole Heritage Foundation of today. I only knew of the local, more or less, neighborhood social organizations like the Autocrat Club in New Orleans. Well, like so many young Creoles in the 40s, returning from military service to other parts of the country, I lost touch to a large degree with the New Orleans Creole-style community. Now, the city of Los Angeles Creole community in the 50s through the 70s provided a modicum of Creole community, but nothing like the Creole community in New Orleans in the 30s and 40s. And then moving out of Los Angeles proper into the larger Los Angeles area suburban community further isolated me from my cultural upbringing, and not to mention moving to Oregon 13 years ago. Ever find yourself in a place where you see someone that has a look or a flavor about them that suggests that they might be a Creole or whatever, only to discover that it is more how they look physically that caused your misperception? Now, of course, I love where I live now in the rainy Pacific Northwest, but if there are any Creoles up here, I haven't seen any. So that's why I decided that I had to come to the celebration. And I'm so very glad I did. I can't put into words the feelings of joy and connection that I felt at the celebration and am still feeling today. That feeling of joy and connection was certainly encouraged and facilitated by the warm and gracious welcome and ongoing support and assistance of Mrs. Janet Rabare Colson, the Executive Director of the NSU Creole Heritage Center, and her eager, dedicated staff. I can't thank Mrs. Colson and her staff enough. I believe that the flavor and essence of what it's like to be Creole comes through in the speeches and presentations that you will see and hear in the series of broadcasts that comprise the complete program. I believe that whether or not you're a Creole, you're bound to learn more about us, our heritage, and our love of life. I hope that after viewing any or all of this series of programs, you viewers might become encouraged to find more of the fun and love of life in your own particular culture. So, enough of my talk, and on with the program.
Would you help us and help me welcome Jim Segredo?
Thank you very much. I want to clarify one thing so I don't get fired. I'm not the director of the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. I'd like to be, but I'm not. I'm the director of relic programs for the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. It's a real honor to be here, ladies and gentlemen, to the conference. And first of all, another thing I want to clarify is that I'm not a grants person. I direct a specific off-the-shelf program that I have in libraries throughout the state. But I work with the grants officers in the LEH. So I can answer a few general questions about grants, but anything beyond that I'll be misleading you. But I certainly encourage you to contact the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities grants program officers if you have specific ideas for grants, because they're the ones who can facilitate developing proposals and so forth that will be successfully funded and implemented. What I wanted to talk about as Director of RELIC is what RELIC is about, because it does have some relationship to conferences like this, also community activities, and to some degree to grants, although like I said, I can't really speak about grants too well. First of all, RELIC is an acronym standing for Readings in Literature and Culture, and what RELIC is humanities programs in public libraries, mostly in historical and literary subjects. They're reading and discussion programs in the sense that the project provides books that are loaned out to the participants at the local library, and for 6 weeks during the program, the books serve as platforms for discussion about issues and ideas that are either directly related to the readings, but merely also simply as starting points for discussions of experiences that participants in the programs may have and how they reflect in their communities. And this is my first time I put together this little presentation. First of all, is the microphone okay? Or is it too loud, or is it just about right? Okay, raise your hand if I'm too close or not close enough to this cordless mic. As director, I've been directing programs for 20 years, so I've visited lots of reading programs in lots of places. And I have some perspective on it and decided to try to put together what I've learned and observed and what others who have provided information through evaluations have shared with me about the reading programs. So my presentation is entitled Research, Reclamation, and Reevaluation, the Role of Humanities Programs in Understanding Identity and Experience. And first of all, RELIC adult readers engage in reading and discussion of literary and historical subjects. We're not teaching people how to read. The people who come to our programs already are big readers, people like yourselves, educated, interested in particular subjects. We really provide an arena in which you can discuss issues based on a series of books that we have, through research, provided for the particular programs. And our programs are all over the area in the humanities. We have historical programs, literary programs. We have programs that deal with Louisiana. We have programs that deal with the South. We have programs that deal with the national experience. And from time to time over the years, we've had programs that dealt with other parts of the world, so long as they're in the humanities fields. It's the longest-running project conducted by the LEH. The RELIC programs began in the early 80s, and we often work with the Louisiana Library Association because we take place in public libraries, not university libraries, not in museums. We're in public libraries, so the Louisiana Library Association is an important partner in helping us find the locations around the state, such as the Natchitoches Parish Library here, or other parish or city libraries elsewhere in the state to hold the programs. RELIC serves as a gateway for individuals to engage others about books, ideas, and opinions about the human experience. Libraries serve as a forum for intellectual activity in their communities. And I want to stress that aspect, that second aspect, because if you're from a small town or a rural parish and you've grown up there, think of how difficult it's been in past years, many years perhaps, for public libraries to put together their own programs for adults that are of this nature. It requires money. We pay the scholars that present the programs a good bit of honorarium funds. We provide the books, publicity, all that mounts up into large amounts of cash to lay out for a program. So often libraries that are in small communities don't have the funds to do that, and so they often don't put on programs like this. Larger library systems can do it. So in many communities, when the RELIC program comes to town for 6 weeks, that may be the chief adult program the library puts on for maybe months at a time, or maybe even for the whole year. So in that respect, libraries, for a period of time, become a forum for discussion of ideas on a particular subject in that community. And in fact, it's been very successful. Since 1983, we've had almost 83,000 people participate in these programs. And by the end of this year, I predict that we will be up to nearly 86,000 based on current attendance trends. So the first part I want to talk about is research. RELIC programs cover lots of subjects. We have a program on Louisiana history. We have a program on America in World War II. We have a program on Louisiana literature. We have a program on Native Americans in the Southeast. We have so many different subjects. Immigration literature, for example. And what we try to do is pull together different types of reading materials. It may be literature, it may be history, it may be published documents to provide the platform for these programs. And they often are things that maybe people in that particular program may never have been exposed to, or they may have heard about it, but have never seen the document, or may not have run across the novel, or whatever the item may be. And you can tell from this quote here, this is a program that we just had at Winsboro last spring on the Civil War in Louisiana, Battleground Louisiana, Civil War experiences, events and experiences. This person here had relatives who fought in the Civil War up in northeast Louisiana, probably involved in the Vicksburg campaign. And this person is particularly interested in what he or she can find out about family relatives. I'm in your way? Can you see? Okay. What his or her family actually did in terms of the war. And many people are interested in that aspect of their own families. RELIC's Louisiana subjects in particular, the ones that deal with Louisiana, expose readers to Louisiana published documentary materials. One of our programs that we have currently is Louisiana History Perspectives on the Pelican State. And this program has been so popular and has been in so many places since 1995 that we've run out of places to go. So instead of decommissioning the program, a light went off in my head that, well, people are always interested in Louisiana history no matter what it's about, right? So let's replace the books. There's always a new book coming out on some aspect of Louisiana history. So we replaced all but one of the books and just sent the program out to all the same libraries again. And it's generated just as large an audience in places as it did the first time, because people are always interested in new materials that are coming out in Louisiana history. We often use books, but also some documents. And this document we used in the Louisiana history program was particularly illuminating to people. This is the Black Code passed by the Louisiana Territorial Legislature in 1806. People talk about the Black Codes in Louisiana, but often in conversation they're not specific about what they mean. You know, which Black Code, for one thing. There's, of course, the 1720s era Black Code that was a French colonial Black Code. This, however, is the one that came after the Louisiana Purchase, after Louisiana becomes administered by the United States. There were Americans, Anglo-Saxons coming into the Louisiana, to the former colony, into the territory. So all of a sudden you've got this intermingling of people of different languages, different political traditions, and different economic and social interests. And the legislature had to find some way of clarifying the rules. And that's why the code is in English and in French. So this is not the Black Code, the French Black Code that people think about in terms of Louisiana as a colony, because much of the information from that was taken out of this because it no longer applied. So this is a document that often has sparked a lot of discussion, because people didn't realize how the codes were similar over history, but more importantly, how they changed over history, because history was the driver for that. Different circumstances required different responses. Another reading program we have, which is not historical but literary, is called Encounter in Louisiana. Our subjects range all over the humanities, and lots of people like to read novels rather than look at historical materials. And this program was an attempt to look at Louisiana as a meeting ground for peoples and cultures of different backgrounds. We decided, well, we're always talking about Louisiana as a gumbo of people and interests. let's see what the literature has to say about it. There must be something about it. So this program was developed in the early 1990s and is still going strong, and it has often provided discussions for things ranging far away from the novels, far away from the short stories than you would think. In fact, one of the collections of short stories we use in this program is George Washington Cable's Old Creole Days, a rather controversial collection of short stories on many levels. George Washington Cable, of course, was the 19th century author who was the first one to publish literature about Creoles in Louisiana. 9 months old, and it is breaking attendance records almost everywhere where we hold it in Louisiana. I just came from this program last night in Winfield, and Winfield's a rather small town, and we had 19 people involved in that program. And not a single one was a reenactor, thank goodness. One of the materials we use for that is kind of similar to what the lady who presented at the session at 9 o'clock shared with you. This is a published memoir of a young woman who grew up on a plantation in northeast Louisiana during the Civil War. And it goes from 1861 to 1868. So through her passages in the memoir, she shares with you, whether she unconsciously, the optimism of the beginning of the war when everyone thought it was going to be a short, victorious war, through the sacrifices made on the home front, and then the enormous disruptions that took place in northeast Louisiana in the plantation economy once the Union troops began to exert their influence in the area around Vicksburg. And eventually her family's flight across Texas across Louisiana to Texas for the remainder of the war. And then her return and the new circumstances in Louisiana in the Reconstruction period. It's a very interesting firsthand account of the experience from a particular person's perspective, from a particular race and social class, but it's also been generating a great deal of discussion. Another program we have, which I think is of particular relevance to this conference, is a program called the Creole Identity and Experience in Louisiana Literature and History. I described the history program and I described the literature program. This program here uses a mixture of materials from both disciplines. We use historical material and we also use literature, novels, for example, and short stories to explore the Creole experience and the identity, focusing on 3 geographical areas of Louisiana. New Orleans, of course, Cane River, the Natchitoches area here, and also the New Roads area. And the reason we picked those 3 is because our programs have to have books that are available in print to provide to the libraries. And of course we have lots of material in New Orleans. We use Cable. Cable had a novel called The Grandisons, which talks about the Creole families in Louisiana right after the Louisiana Purchase. We use Ernest Gaines's novel, Catherine Cormier. He's, of course, the native son of New Roads in Point Coupé Parish. And, of course, another novel that we use is Cane River by Lily Tatu. And unfortunately, I don't have a copy of the novel to show you. It provides information for people. The other important step and component of RELIC is reclamation. And what I mean by that is you bring the materials together and you're involved in the reading and discussions over the several weeks that the program is in operation. And many people are there because if it's a program on Louisiana or the South, then many people are there because their ancestry is part of that. Their family's history is part of that. So the program serves as a function for them to either rediscover or accentuate or clarify who they are and who they were historically. And in this respect, this commentary that came from a person involved in the Lake Charles program on the Creole experience, I think, says something about that. They want to know more about what it means to be Creole and to be proud of who we are in our culture. So there's a bit of a reclamation project going on in many RELIC programs, depending on what it is. And not strictly Louisiana. We have a program on World War II. It's called I'll Be Seeing You, American World War II. It's focused on the national experience. There's lots of people who, either combat veterans who come to the program and share for the first time with people what it was like to be, say, a paratrooper or something. So the reclamation process can take place in most relic programs depending on who is involved in it. And this reclamation process, I think, it has different components. You share personal experiences. You enhance your knowledge of yourself or of your community. For example, here, clearly, people of Creole ancestry are interested in knowing not just more about themselves, but more about the history of the community here. Or if you're of Creole ancestry in other parts of the state, like Lake Charles, or Texas or California, you want to know more about not just your ancestry in Louisiana, but what the experience was like in Texas or in California, why they went to Texas, why they went to California, and what connections they made in the communities there. Also, locally related research is encouraged. People are specifically looking for things about themselves, specifically about their communities. Some of the consequences of this are unexpected. RELIC has spawned several local initiatives. Now, that doesn't mean that RELIC was part of it and sponsoring it. It simply means that people came to the program and after 6 weeks left, and some of them decided to do something beyond that. And two of the ones that I've noticed over the years involving the RELIC experience were the development of a local historical society in Madison Parish. Madison Parish is up in northeast Louisiana. It's in a delta country along I-20, right before you cross over into Mississippi. About 18 years ago, we had a reading program called Southern Voices, the Conflict of Myth and History. And people came to that program, got involved in discussions, and in the audience evaluations that I read, several people said, we have a lot of local history here that was related to what we read about. Why can't we find a place to bring all that material together? And a couple of the ladies in that program, on their own, started, because they met each other in the program, decided to get together and connect with some of the movers and shakers in the parish to find property or a location to bring together things that people have in their attics or in their scrapbooks, photographs, documents, memorabilia, to highlight the role that Tallulah, in particular, Madison Parish, played in Louisiana history, Southern history, and the country's history. And in fact, they actually put it together. It's a very modest facility, but it's their facility, and they control it, and they're the ones who are able to help interpret the history of the parish through it. Another example is the World War II Regional Museum in the city of Houma. Houma is a big city in the south, part of the oil patch in Louisiana. And I mentioned the RELIC program in World War II that we had. That program, as I said, brings people, especially of the war generation. They're passing on, and they don't want to pass on without sharing what they know about the World War II experience, whether they were in combat or whether they were on the home front. And of course, the best example of that is what was formerly called the D-Day Museum, and is now the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. That's a classic example of this demographic drive to institutionalize and document much of this experience. Well, in other places, people involved in the RELIC program in World War II thought that they should have their own version of that because, for practical purposes, people may want to bring things to a program there. And one gentleman who was involved in this RELIC program in Houma turned out to be a big collector of documents, memorabilia, photographs, and information about the role of Terrebonne Parish in the war. And after the program, he said, I need to share this on some kind of a regular basis with people. And so he and others got together, and with some assistance of people with money in Houma, actually established the World War II Regional Museum in Houma. It's brand new. It's probably no more than maybe 6 months, 7 months old. And it's being well supported. Those are two examples of things that came out of the RELIC program, and people on their own, civically minded, took the initiative to develop an institutional expression of that. And these things can be very modest. I mean, that's the Madison Parish Historical Center. It's just a house. Well, that's because it's a rural parish. You're not going to have a big building, but that's theirs. People go there to do research. They make contributions to it. They have special meetings there, but it's theirs. The third part is, I think, the most important, reevaluation. Besides the research that is in any relic program, is, I think, to me, as director, the most important. As this brilliant quote from yours truly has to say, "No one leaves relic unchanged." Thank you very much. Make sure you put that on there. I think this guy deserves a raise for this brilliant insight. But my point is simply this. Relic does not attempt to impose a particular perspective or opinion or ideological view on any of the subjects we offer. We have a variety of books so that we provide lots of platforms, lots of avenues for inquiry in the discussion process. And we don't even expect people to walk out of the program with their opinions different. Because that's none of our business, what people's opinions are personally. All we can do is offer an environment. What we do hope is that they come out at least thinking about whatever the subjects or issues are in a different way, even if their conclusions are not changed. If their conclusions are changed, that was their own personal intellectual process at work. And that's the most important part about Relic, because Relic is not attempting to change people's views about things, but merely make sure that they see all the different perspectives that are practically available. You know, the reading material is a common platform, and the experiences, the perspectives of experiences and of readings and personal experience provide an analysis. You know, you're listening. You know, you come into the program with a particular opinion about, say, the Civil War. Trust me, I've been to that program, and people have very set opinions about the Civil War in this state, and they think that everybody else thinks exactly the same way. And then someone in the audience says, "Well, I have a different view on that." And this is the person they may have known socially but never discussed it with. So all of a sudden, you know, I said, "Well, I never thought about it quite that way." So that process, that analytical process, is very much in play. And that's because reading and thinking about things by yourself and discussing them are related but very distinct cognitive processes. You're reading a book, you're nodding, you're nodding to yourself about what you've read. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. This book confirms what I thought. And you go to the reading program, and someone else has done the same thing at home, comes to the program, and they have an entirely different view of the same thing. And that's because the reading is important intellectually, and discussion is, but they're not the same. There are two different steps involved. All of a sudden, you know, the novel has a different perspective from this person as opposed to that person. You know, reading and discussion of ideas and experiences with others subjects previous opinions to an objective test for validity, not the objective test. It merely, all we're trying to do is create more of a level playing field with clear rules, intellectual rules, so that, you know, as many valid opinions can come out. We don't expect to have the only answer for the clarification or illumination of whatever the issues are. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, Relic is intellectually and on a social level and personal level an experience that offers something to everybody involved in reading and then discussing ideas on subjects of intellectual, whether it's cultural, historical, or literary interest. We've had many people come out of the Relic programs and I think make some connection with like a local historical society or some other organization to submit grants to the LEH from time to time based on some of the ideas or research interests that were developed in the reading programs. And as I said, the grants officers are there to try to make sure that any general ideas are going to be bounced off of them, and they can vet it to at least suggest, well, you should take this approach to submitting the application, and you have to have these ducks in a row to try to maximize the chances that the program, that the proposal will be will be funded. Basically, the RELIC programs, they're developed through lots of partnerships. Whenever we have a new subject, like the Creole program or the Civil War program, we try to get input from lots of places around the state, because we can't rely on one single source of ideas or recommendations for our subjects. Our subjects have to be in so many different public libraries in so many parts of this diverse state, and they have to be publicly supported, that we look at many different sources. We look at many different types of materials, and I think generally speaking, we put together programs that are provocative and informative without telling people what they should think. We're in fact looking at brand new programs on new subjects. For example, we're considering a program on Elizabeth I of England, which sounds like something very far afield from all the things I've shown you. But think about how many times something about Elizabeth I of England shows up on TV or in the movies or a new book. You know, that's a subject of perennial interest to people. So we're going to try to find out whether there's enough public interest in a subject like that. But many of our subjects, as you've seen, deal with Louisiana. They deal with Louisiana's history, culture, society, and particularly we try to focus on areas and people that play a significant, unique role in making the state an interesting place. I'd like to ask you about how many of you are from outside the state attending this conference? Wow, it looks like about two-thirds closely. Two-thirds are from outside. Well, unfortunately, you can't participate in RELIC unless you move back to Louisiana. Okay, move back, buy property, and you can participate in RELIC. And certainly, we certainly welcome you back to Louisiana, wherever you're from. So, thank you very much for your attention, and I'll entertain a few questions. I see a lady here had a question. I'm sorry. The programs are not on the internet, but the LEH website is there, and you can see the whole list of our programs on the LEH website, which is www.leh.org. You can also get information from the website about grants. At the table at the front of the entrance of the room, the young lady there has copies of a history of some of the grants that we provided that deal in one way or another with Creoles. It's merely like a snapshot of examples of what we've done in the past. Any other questions? Well, I thank you. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, maybe you could, maybe you could.
Take this to that one. Is that one?
No, it's working.
Mm-hmm. How interested are you in?
I hear you now. Okay.
How interested are you in some of the reconstruction information on educators in Louisiana of African descent? For instance, my great-grandfather was one of the first educators to come into Vermilion Parish and open the first schools under the Freedmen's Act. So does your organization, are you aware of some of these things, and do you promote this kind of history?
Well, let me say first of all, that sounds like something that a grant proposal would be pertinent for. The RELIC programs, the RELIC programs have to go statewide. So there are lots of subjects that won't work in most parts of the state for lots of reasons. You know, they could be simply because there aren't enough published books on it. I mean, you know, our reading programs, the RELIC programs, for example, like in Winfield last night, we had 19 people there. We had 19 sets of books there. You know, the books have to be in print for us to be able to run these programs throughout the state. So RELIC is sort of like, the strength of RELIC is that, you know, we can deliver these things statewide. The weakness is that, you know, if there aren't enough books published that we can use, that are readable, that are appealing to people, the program's not going to be popular and not be successful. But something like that, I think, is more like a grant proposal because it involves research and also involves specific resources that the applicant would be able to provide in terms of like background about the person, you know, like maybe like an exhibition of some sort or a symposium or along those lines.
Well, I do all of those things, and I think that you just answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm a little hard of hearing. That's why this is probably the best way to do that. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your attendance and your interest and your questions. And for those of you who are elsewhere, come on back to the conference and come on back to Louisiana. We can use you. Thank you very much.